Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
My name is Ben. I have been a public park groundskeeper for almost 4 years now. This job has put me through hell and high waters. Most of my daily life there is incredibly boring. I guarantee you guys don't want to hear about how hard I shoveled gravel or the bolts that needed changing on the swing sets. No, what I have for you are the good, creepy, unnerving stories. So let's get to it. I only have 2 pre-typed stories at the moment. If more is requested, then more shall be given. Story 1. This one happened at about the first month of my career. Before I go further, the city I work in is large, but has very little crime. After getting my first couple work assignments done, I was instructed to watch after the services area, for example, bathrooms, fountains, telephones. This proved to be a difficult job because I could only do this during the night, as the park was in use during the day. Just as my shift had begun at around 11:30 p.m., I began to hear strange scraping noises all throughout the park. I first thought to myself, damn it, why do my coworkers have to pull these pranks on the new guy? I kept half expecting for someone to jump out of the bushes with one of those $5 scream masks on. This was much worse. I eventually found the source of the scraping. The source was nearby the main fountain. A rather large stone bench had moved considerably off of its mark. When I went to look up in detail, the following hit me like a train. The bench was secured to the ground with half-inch steel cable. The cable had looked like it had been effortlessly torn off. There was no way anything human could have done this. A bear, maybe. I quickly shook off that, though. Despite being in a bear-prone state, they never once moved near the park. I sighed and walked to the nearby breaker station and turned on the fountain lights. I needed to repair the bench before daytime or my boss would have my head. After switching on the beaker, I walked over the supply shed near the playground. Almost the entire time, the scraping was there but distant. I got the pitch and replacement cables and walked to the fountain. About midway through my journey back to the fountain, I began to see some layered brick taken out of the ground in the path from the shed to the fountain. I was getting super pissed off. I walked briskly back to the breaker station and turned on all main power. That is when I saw it. Perhaps this thing was blinded by the sudden light, but outside of one of the windows I saw it. Due to the panic at the time, I couldn't get a clear view, but here's what I saw. A thin, leathery creature approximately 2.3 meters tall with stubby but very muscular arms and legs like a racehorse. I have never done any drugs or experimented with hallucinogens, and am very confident that is what I saw. The creature's eyes widened and he booked the hell out of there. He was gone in half a second. I dropped everything I was doing, sprinted to my Jeep, and drove out of there. I did not sleep well that night. The next day, the storeroom was ransacked. I was, of course, blamed for it. The bricks that I saw on the way to the fountain were put back in place. The fountain bench was not. Luckily, my boss bought that a bear might have torn the bench cables. This spared me my job. I had to clean up the storeroom, but that was pretty much it. Story 2. After 5 months of working there, very small paranormal activities happened. This included doors randomly opening, swings moving on their own and such. I had grown to accept these type of things. They were far too common to be considered a big deal. This story happened around the 5 or 6 month working there at around 5:45 p.m. My boss called me up, as usual around this time, to clean the toilets. The bathrooms were nasty as hell after a full Sunday. Some asshole had taken a shit directly on one of the seats in the women's bathroom. I got to work. Around 50 minutes later, the women's bathroom was clean. Luckily, the men's was next door, a literal 15-second walk. As I was cleaning the men's, I kept hearing tapping and small screeching noises next door. I figured somebody had walked in there after hours and used it. This interrupted my cleaning, as visitors after 5:30 on Sunday weren't allowed. I walked over and carefully tapped on the door. "Excuse me, miss. The park is closed. You can finish up, but I need you out of there pretty quickly." The worst smell I have even smelt came through the door the next second. Pulling the collar of my shirt over my mouth, I went to investigate. In the second-to-last stall, the toilet was filled to the brim with various elements of fecal matter, urine, and worst of all, maggots. Thousands of tiny maggots wriggled around in the toilet. I vomited right on the floor. I think I shouted obscenities at my lungs the entire time I was getting trash bags and cleaning this up. Normally this wouldn't smell for the time it had taken for someone to get it in the bathroom, only 20 minutes maximum, but this smelt as though it had been here for weeks. After cleaning up and flushing, I encountered a greater problem. The plumbing was clogged up. I became extremely frustrated and began to just pull the flushing lever mercilessly. This yielded something smellier. After around the 100th pull, a large, almost cylinder mess of hair and fecal matter poured out. I was done. I left for home right then. I still had to clean it up the next day, though.
Do your coworkers have similar stories? Have they experienced paranormal type stuff at the park? Or are you the only one this seems to happen to?
I haven't really asked. I was warned by a few park workers that odd things happen here a lot. I told people about my first story, and nobody believed me. I can ask some of them right now. Story 3. First off, this is what the creature looked like, except the head. I didn't get a clear look at it. The park had been experiencing multiple power outages outside from the city. Our park just randomly lost power. I was always sent to fix it. At this point in time, it was around winter. I had to stay pretty late into the night, most often. The skate park was pretty far away from the playground and walking trails, but was still park property. Recently, we had reports of homeless people in the area. I was in charge of getting rid of them. The skate park was pretty empty aside from one odd-looking man on the far side of one of the big jumps. I went over to talk to him. He seemed pretty understanding and agreed to leave, but he warned me not to wander around this part. That is where the creature lies. I at first presumed he was just some crazy homeless dude, but then I remembered the one thing I saw my first month. I was very worried, but also relieved that I wasn't the only one to see it. I spent the rest of the night looking around the nearby wooded area for the homeless, but I came upon something strange. A somewhat large clearing had been made, and in this clearing at least 100 bricks had been piled in the center. These bricks all seemed to be from the park's storage. Only me, my boss, and another coworker could get in there. I couldn't imagine why any of them would do something like that. I went to get the wheelbarrow from the park shed. My boss would kill me if she found out about this. When I was going to get it, the familiar scraping sound resounded behind me, near the pile. When I came back, the pile had been neatly arranged in a circle, and in the middle of the circle was a pile of cables. I was sure it was the creature again. As I began to load up the bricks, I kept hearing twigs snap and shit like that, and ever so often out of the corner of my eye, I would see something. When I loaded up the last brick, I saw it again. The creature was perched in a nearby oak tree. It growled and screeched at me. I had really pissed it off this time. I thought to myself, oh fuck man, I gotta get out of here. That is what I did. I ran for my life. The creature jumped down from its perch and threw the wheelbarrow over, sending bricks flying. I am pretty sure I had actually pissed myself at this point. The creature showed no signs of pursuit until I got back to my Jeep. A lone brick had been placed on the hood. Fuck this. I left for the night. Many apologies for my spelling and grammar. I am typing this pretty fast.
Have you ever thought of taking your phone out when you hear the scraping noises? Or is that just a risk you're not willing to take? Granted, you are telling the truth and believe that you are in a life-threatening situation.
I almost never carry my phone with me. I have fallen too many times and hit my pockets with too many tools in it. I have broken 3 phones this way. I will start carrying it when I return to work tomorrow. I can try the next time I see. This next story happened around year 2 of working here. Bricks began to start going missing from the park terrain itself, as well as chunks of asphalt. They had been thrown from around the edges of the paths and trails. At first I had assumed them to just become loose, but the number per day had become more and more. The first week, it was around 10, The next week, as much as 30. This week, the numbers had reached well over 60. I decided to check out the old clearing again. The clearing had various small piles of bricks ranging from 3 inches to 2 feet high. I once again retrieved the wheelbarrow and began putting them back in their original positions on the paths. The numbers luckily started to dwindle. About a week after I hauled the first load of bricks back, others began hearing the scraping noises. My co-workers just shrugged it off, but I knew it was something else. The creature also did not take too kindly to other wildlife. One day, I was putting gravel around the sides of a building when I kept hearing distant sounds of something in pain, like a deer or some other animal. I worked for at least an hour before I decided to get a drink from one of the nearby water fountains. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something on the ground. It was a deer leg. Not just like the knee, I mean up to the flank, still leaking blood. God damn it. I had to stop the gravel shoveling for a deer leg. I went to get the trash bags from my wheelbarrow. I kind of suspected something like this would happen, so I was prepared. When I returned, 2 legs were now on the ground. This was ridiculous. I called out for whoever was there. In return, I got a low growl. Bears wouldn't dare be in this area. I picked up the legs and disposed of them. As I was returning to the gravel, a wet-sounding thud came from the front of the building. The thing must have thought I liked its other presence, so it gave me the whole package. The entire deer, minus its hind legs, lay there dead. The strange thing was, there was almost no blood, as if it had been drained already. I got it into a bag and buried it in the woods. The thing must not have liked it, because around 100 feet away, a loud and quick scowl came from nowhere. I calmly left and finished with the gravel. At this point, I decided to carry a knife with me in case of any emergencies, and by that, I mean close encounters with the nope kind. I was parking my Jeep in the west parking lot, when out of nowhere, a bird is chucked at my back windshield. I am confident it did not fly into it because when I looked at what it hit, I saw that it had no head. Odd. I had to go open all of the park gates to let the cars in before opening time. To do this meant driving everywhere. On my way to open the southeast gate, the main entrance by the playground, I saw something on the playground. The creature appeared a tad smaller in the daylight, but there it was, romping around the playground. It didn't know I was here, so I decided to study it. It picked up various objects from around the park and carried them in its arms. It was a short time before it suddenly perked up, looked in the direction of the woods in front of me, and left. This thing wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. One of the items I saw it pick up was a small red backpack. Around 2 in the afternoon, the crowd began to die down. Fewer and fewer people were left here. It was a relief. At around closing time, I began to scout the edges of the park for stragglers to alert them closing time is approaching. There were still people in the park, but they were either near an exit or leaving. I remembered what I saw that morning and how it acted when it knew nobody would be around. That got me worried. I was the only one, to my knowledge, that had a direct encounter with it, so it wasn't afraid of me, and it seemed I was the only one around. After nearing the woods to the park, I got increasingly more nervous. There were some skaters in the skate park. I told them it was time to leave. They simply told me to fuck off and laughed. Not even 5 seconds after they said that, a low growl came from the woods. They yelled and ran like crazy. I was laughing my ass off, but then it hit me. Only one thing made that sound before. Sure enough, it was lurking in the back of the woods, hiding behind large trees, trying its best not to be seen. I began to walk towards it, my hand on my knife grip. As I approached 70 feet away, it sprinted like hell away from me, clearing trees and rocks. The rest of the park was clear, so I locked up and went home. I'm done with stories for now. I will start another thread if anything interesting happens. Any questions I would be happy to answer, besides my name and park location. I won't give out the park location because if it is contacted, I can be fired for saying stuff like this. They only have one employee named Ben, so they will know who it is.
Dude, you are the monster here. The creature tried its most to not bother you, and it is just trying to make a nice nest for winter. But you always mess up his work. So for a little bit of a prank of revenge, he shat on the toilet you just cleaned. He tried to make you stop bothering him with the nest building, so he gave you some gifts, but you just threw away his gifts. Imagine if you gave someone a present and then the person threw it away at your face. You should feel guilty. About the brick on your Jeep, it was trying to tell you that it needed the bricks to build its nest. It also tried to help you scare away the skater punks who've been telling you to fuck off for doing your job. This is clearly a sign that the creature has an affection for you. But you scared him away by bringing a knife. For fuck's sake, what a monster you are. Dude, if you want peace, buy it a bunch of bricks or something and tell it to not bother you again or break shit at the park. Tell it that if it needs something, just put the message on your Jeep like before. I still can believe you can be that asshole OP.
I thought I'd share a few experiences that I've had to do with my ex-place of living. A half-decommissioned school. When I was like 11 or 12, I moved to the UK from Murica, my dad being a Britbong who was in search of a job following the recession. His friend had offered him a job as a groundskeeper maintenance man at a school he was headmaster of. There was a kind of catch to the contract, though, that being we would have to live in a house directly adjacent to the school site with a gate that could access it, so he could easily respond to calls for maintenance during operating hours and check on any faulty security alarms that might go off in the night. Turns out it was a school for kids with severe emotional trauma from broken homes, which generally manifested in the kids behaving like little psychos, so constant maintenance was needed to keep up with constant smashed windows, kicked down doors, smashed displays, and broken light fixtures. Needless to say, my dad kept himself busy over there. I could tell it was quite upsetting for him to see kids who were so traumatized that they had no way of handling themselves other than by breaking everything and screaming their lungs out. Anyway, about a year after we moved in, the site had to be renovated. The site is roughly 26 acres in size, pretty big for a UK school, I'd say, and the cost of keeping the entire facility operational with a student base of only around 150 or so was impossible to justify, so the decision was made to decommission 4 of the 9 buildings on site. Now, the place actually used to be a full-blown asylum, essentially. It was constructed sometime in the early 1900s, and in the 80s became a school, and was originally part of a much larger complex, which had been mostly demolished sometime in the mid-90s to make way for housing. Well, it was around summer break that work began on the site. They had gutted out the buildings that they had decided to decommission and set up new gates, and that seemed to be that. But it being summer meant I was allowed to go over to the school and roam around whenever I pleased, so long as I didn't get underfoot of any contractors or staff. To be perfectly honest, since I had first set foot in the place, it had me a tad spooked. The buildings were all old and gloomy looking, and being in a school when there's no students around is an uncanny feeling. And frankly, the uncanniness is only compounded when you're surrounded by evidence of just how out of the ordinary the students who attend there are. The walls inside the buildings were scratched to hell, covered in black marks and graffiti. No matter how many times they painted over it, the walls would have some new kind of obscenity scrawled on it within a day of them getting the job done. But that's beside the point. Where was I going? Oh yeah, going over there whenever. One night I decided to face my fears and go for an exploration in the dead of night. I crept out of the gate and onto the site, turning on my flashlight. I followed the path down to the bottom of the site and arrived outside the furthest flung building, 7. Each building with students was numbered 1 through 7. Out of all the buildings, that one spooked me the hardest back then and still does to this day. I crept up to the window and peered in, lifting my flashlight to get a better look. The room was empty, save for a few desks that had been left in there and a couple of boxes. I kept looking, but heard a sudden and deep thud noise from within, followed by a scraping, dragging noise. Whatever it may have been, it freaked me the ever-living shit out, and I ran home, locking the gate behind me. A year later, there was another run-in I had with Seven. Dad had opened up the door to use the building as a storage depot of sorts, just throwing whatever garbage he needed to in there for safekeeping. I went to look for him one summer afternoon because my mom had made us all lunch and saw the door open. I called out for him, but he wasn't inside. I guessed he had wandered off elsewhere to grab something, but I couldn't resist the temptation to poke around a bit. For only being out of service for about 2 years at this point, the place was seriously decayed. Black mold was all over the walls in most rooms, and the paint had started to fall from the ceiling in huge, thin chunks. The windows had also been boarded up, so there was absolutely no light. I felt my way up the stairs and into a hallway where there were a couple uncovered windows at either end. I stepped into a room at the end and was sort of puzzled by what I saw. It looked like a whole classroom had just been left there. Computer still on the teacher's desk. Just everything was covered in mold. Why the hell they would leave that much useful shit to rot, I have no idea. In the corner there was the husk of a bee's nest, and dead bees were all over the place. I turned around and scarpered again, didn't ask Dad any questions, and decided I ought to stay away for good. To wrap up my experiences with Seven. This one was my most recent encounter at the school, but Seven only accounts for a few of my experiences. Maybe I'll post more if there's enough interest, and the thread is here later. I came home from my university for the summer, with lockdown and all in effect. I decided one night to smoke some cigs, my paranoia of the school having faded for the most part. I wandered over to the school and away from the house to light it. Having found a suitably sheltered spot away from the buildings, however, I had a clear line of sight down to Seven. There was a single security light they had installed at some point on the corner of the building, making it look even more ominous than it already had before. I lit my cig and sat down, which may have been a very poor decision in the end. See, I was already a bit drunk and my mind had gone, yeah, the school would be an absolutely excellent place to smoke right now. I immediately got paranoid, the memory of the noise inside coming back. Maybe it was the booze, but there was something so powerful about it that I kinda started crying a bit, but I didn't want to move. I calmed myself down a bit, but kept staring at the building. I could have sworn I saw the head of someone staring up at me, poking out of the gate next to Seven. I immediately got up and sprinted back to house and into my room. Fuck that. The next day when I got up, Dad asked me if I had gone and opened the gate by 7 when I was out in the night. He always keeps it closed. Keeps it.
Where was this school? We had an old asylum that became a school near Beddington. Sutton, I'm pretty sure.
Around Birmingham. Don't want to give away too many specifics, though. The same summer that I had my second run-in with Seven, the IT guy had a pretty good idea for how to reward the best-behaved students. Some of them were just autists or Aspies and a lot less destructive, so he trusted them with creating models to go on a big-scale extric track. Some of the models were pretty good, some of them pretty awful, but we were going to assemble it anyways. IT dude had shacked up in 4s. Buildings 4 through 7 had been decommissioned, and what made 7's decay feel so remarkable was just how good of condition buildings 4 through 6 were inside, despite sharing the same architecture, same boarded-up windows, same interior decorations, everything. So I went down to 4 one day to help him out, like I had done for a couple weeks before. It was a pretty substantial project all in all. The track was huge. IT dude had left a note that his kid had gotten sick and his wife had to go to work, so he'd left to take care of them, but that I should work on the track some more anyways. So I did, for about an hour before I heard an absolutely deafening boom come from upstairs. I tried not to think any of it, just assuming some old filing cabinet that was left at a precarious angle had finally fallen over or something. I went out into the hallway and looked up and down, but suddenly felt a strong blast of cold air. I searched around to see if somehow someone had left open a window and taken down a board or something, but I found nothing of the sort. After that, I decided to leave for the day. Stranger still, a couple years later, my dad described having a very similar experience, just in another block. There's another case I probably ought not discuss in too much detail, as it's really not meant to get out. I don't have a lot of details as I was only told a few things by the headmaster my dad was friends with, but he had told me a student there had stabbed the ever-living shit out of another kid, killing him. This happened before I moved here. He wouldn't tell me if it was on or off-site though, when I tried to ask. Apparently it's pretty common for a lot of these kids to get wrapped up in gangs and organized crime, and wind up in prison for assault or stabbings, but only a few have followed through on the deed. I know about a year ago as well that a kid who had just graduated was arrested on suspicion of him murdering a disabled guy. That school is weird. It's like a manifestation of the fucking insane, hateful energy so many of those kids have. Here's a picture of 7 as well. I know it's a pretty shit picture, but my phone is ass at getting nighttime pictures. I've told this a few times, but I'll share it again. It isn't the most climactic, but whatever. I was dating a girl that liked spooky stuff and lived with 2 of her friends. The 2 friends were dating each other. For the purpose of the story, I'll call the girl I dated M, and her 2 friends J, boyfriend, and K, girlfriend. Hanging out at their house, bored. Me and M love creepy shit, so I regularly scroll through Shadowland's website to find a creepy place to go. Find a haunted cemetery a couple towns over. Bring it up, everybody is down. I drive us all to the cemetery. It's in the middle of nowhere at the end of a dead-end street. Already a bit creeped, but whatever. Find our way in. I've learned there's usually a gate or something unlocked in cemeteries. Walk around, explore and shit. Been there for hours. Seen lots of aesthetic gravestones. Jay keeps taking pics and freaking out cause there's orbs in them. His lens was dusty and not well taken care of. Hear a loud dragging noise by the groundskeeper shack. OSShare.gif. Go completely silent and listen. Keep hearing it at random intervals. Sounds specifically like dragging a heavy bag on the gravel ground. Immediately I think of something like Pyramid Head from Silent Hill, but decide to investigate anyways cause I make good life choices. Me and M go check out noise. It doesn't stop, just gets louder. Pinpoint where it's coming from, or at least where it should be coming from. Nothing there. Still hear it right in front of us. Kinda just stare, trying to make sense of this completely still patch of dirt and rocks causing a loud dragging sound for some unknown reason. Eventually report back to J and K. M starts bawling cause she's so scared, so we have to leave. Later that night when I'm hanging alone with M, she tells me she felt something pull her hair as we were leaving.
I actually worked at a cemetery as work parole. One thing I found really funny is that no one would take the post, so they did a bunch of really shit jobs instead. At the time I dismissed it as I was hardcore Euphoria Fedora class before that was even a thing. The cemetery itself was really peaceful and on a nice plot of land. I helped with burying people in the sense that I helped plot out and dig the beginning of the graves, which then the actual graveyard employee groundskeeper would dig the rest with tools and the like. During the ceremonies themselves, we would fuck off and go back to the work shed as to not disturb anyone. Though I did watch from afar, and honestly what I saw changed what I thought. Watching people say their final goodbyes and the like really got me thinking. Since the person was dead, I suppose they didn't care, and it was really more for the living to deal. Watching the living deal was an experience for sure. I think you have to be completely heartless to not feel anything when someone waves that final goodbye to the headstone or whatever. Now at the time, I was facing a felony conviction, and if so, I would have been in for a whole lot of hell, I'm sure. Getting Chris Chand, beatings, etc., who knows, but all I knew is that it wasn't going to be good, and that if I didn't fight, I'd probably increase my chances of getting punked or killed. The thing was that when I was there working, I felt at peace. That's where I started to wonder if it was just me, or had most of them really moved on and found that peace, and as a result sort of left an echo of it on where they were. The groundskeeper was odd or something compared to some of the other people that I ended up working with, and they would talk shit about him. To me, I don't know, he seemed like he had seen beyond, you know. Dude really didn't seem worried or upset with where he was. Not a lot of people that are successful, or whatever they call it these days, can say the same.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.